Hello and welcome. How much American history can you believe, and is it being manipulated? Well, much more than you know, according to our guest today, who says there's a hidden story behind many of the key events documented in the USA. From the assassinations of influential leaders to criminal behavior by the government, much of what happened and still happens remains highly classified. Jesse Ventura is a man with a colorful and action-packed past. From life as a U.S. Navy SEAL to becoming a celebrity professional wrestler, he went on to be elected governor of Minnesota, serving for 4 years before deciding to move on. But Jesse Ventura is always happy to take a tough stand, which he did in his previous New York Times best-selling book, Don't Start the Revolution Without Me, criticizing the Democratic and Republican parties along with the media. He takes the next step in stirring up controversy with his current book, American Conspiracies, Lies, Lies, and More Dirty Lies That the Government Tells Us, which takes us on an intriguing journey seeking the truth about America's contemporary history. Remember, you can join our conversation with your questions and comments. You can send an SMS or an email, and we'll welcome your phone calls into the show as well. Governor Jesse Ventura, great to have you back on the show.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So you say some pretty strong stuff in your new book there. It makes it sound like we shouldn't trust anything that the American history books tell us. Why is all that stuff out there so wrong? How could it, I mean, how come there's no mainstream debate on the errors, so to speak?
I don't know. You know, it's interesting. I'm starting to believe the United States is starting to practice censorship. I mean, I wrote an article for the Huffington Post. They posted it and then immediately took it down, and now they won't print it. You know, and I was astounded that the Huffington Post would do that. So, you know, it's a case of, you know, we got to take our country back as citizens and start restoring our freedom and our constitutional rights again.
Now, of course, traveling around the world, we hear a lot of conspiracy theories involving the USA, and people who talk about conspiracies are often seen as nuts, and their views are dismissed without having any credibility. And I wonder what sort of reaction you've had. I mean, have you set yourself up basically for some pretty harsh criticism here?
Well, I'm sure I probably have, you know, but amazingly it hasn't come too bad, and my book has already risen to number 4 on Amazon, so clearly there are people out there that want to read it, and you know, but I'll take the criticism. When they approached me to do this book, I initially turned it down, and then I thought about it a couple weeks, and then I accepted to do it because I felt so strongly that 100 years from now, I want people to be able to look back at this era of time and realize that not all of us believed what we were told. Not all of us believed what was written in the United States history books and everything about these 14 conspiratorial events that I write about in the book.
Now, we had a number of emails from viewers around the world with questions for you, and if I may put one to you that came in from a viewer by the name of Jenan Rizvanovich, who says, why would Ventura write against his own government after serving as governor of Minnesota for 4 years? Does he know more than he is allowed to tell, or is he just stimulating his personal economy?
Well, first of all, I live by an old saying that Thomas Jefferson said, and that is, dissension is the greatest form of patriotism. I'm a firm believer that you have to hold your elected officials' feet to the fire, so to speak, because if you don't do that, you will get bad government. If you do that, you'll get better government. So and for anyone to question my patriotism to this country, I answer like this. My father was a World War II veteran with 6 Bronze Battle Stars. My mother was a World War II veteran and served in North Africa. Myself and my brother are both Vietnam veterans. So all 4 members of my family served at a time of war for this country. So I will not accept anyone telling me that I'm somehow unpatriotic.
Actually, I think, you know, Governor, what the question was alluding to, and I guess that's the intriguing part of it, was, do you know more than you're allowed to tell?
No, not at all. I don't believe so, but let's remember, I was probably shielded. I didn't belong to the Democratic Party. I didn't belong to the Republican Party, and of course they knew that I would come and go. So no, I do not know more than what I'm telling.
Interesting question came in from another viewer, Dan Roberts, who wrote in saying, what could be done to obligate politicians to investigate these conspiracies? Any ideas?
Well, it's very difficult, because if the conspiracy involves the government, then who is it that investigates the government? The government? And that's what happens. I'm a firm believer today. I think that these commissions that they form, like the Warren Commission and the 9/11 Commission, they're not designed to seek the truth. They're designed to carry forth the message of the status quo, or whatever message the government wants delivered to the people.
Let's look at some of the issues you raise in the book, and it really is fascinating. One of those is the assassinations of many of leading American leaders in particular, Abraham Lincoln, JFK, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., Robert Kennedy. What do you see as the common thread between these men? Is there any common threat they posed, and to whom?
Well, there's a couple common threads between them all. First of all, other than Malcolm X and, of course, Abraham Lincoln years and years ago, all of them were killed by supposedly lone nuts. People that acted completely alone, never spoke to anyone, never conspired with another soul. They were all miserable failures in their lives. But yet, on the event of killing a prominent person, they get an A. They're completely successful. I find it astounding to believe that all of these assassins were lone nuts.
It's interesting.
Then, the second tie-in, if you look at the death of Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, and throw in John Lennon of the Beatles, what did all three of them have in common? They were all under CIA and government surveillance when they were murdered.
Where does this lead? In fact, it's interesting because I think you mentioned about this fear that Malcolm X and Martin Luther King would collaborate and cooperate and perhaps present more of a threat. And again, I wonder who in particular would see it that way.
Well, I'm sure the status quo, they were fighting racism back then. They were fighting human rights in this country. And there were a lot of people that were not for that at the time. That's why it was a fight. And the interesting thing was, when Malcolm made his trip to Mecca, Malcolm had always preached segregation before that. He saw the light when he went there, and he realized there are bad black men, there are bad brown-skinned men, there are bad white-skinned men. We're all human beings. And Malcolm had changed his position and had actually met once with Dr. Martin Luther King. And I think that did cause fear, that these two powerful black individuals would unite and that they would lose control of them at that point.
Well, of course, America now has its first black president. That's been a huge milestone in this country for this country. And I wonder where does this leave Barack Obama? He's achieved so much. I wonder what sort of threat he poses to, again, the status quo, those who would have it another way, and what sort of risks he faces, in your opinion.
Well, first of all, when I heard him give his inaugural address and heard everything he wanted to do, I turned to my wife. I said, he better be careful if he thinks he's going to try to do all this. But since he's gotten into office, I've been very disappointed because it seems that somebody got to him. He's not doing the things he said he would do when he ran. He said he'd pull us out of the wars. We're not getting out of them. We're going deeper into them. He said that we lost habeas corpus, the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution, the right to illegal search and seizure. It was torn apart. Why isn't he restoring this stuff? Why did they renew the Patriot Act, which to me just takes all the freedoms away? And I believe this, when a government tells you they're going to make you safe, get ready because you're going to lose your freedoms. I would rather have my freedoms than have government try to provide safety for me.
But I wonder, Governor, you know the mechanisms of how the U.S. government works, and I wonder if you really believe that Barack Obama, as an individual, even as the Commander-in-Chief, could actually change all those things that you say, whether or not he has the freedom to really make that change.
Oh, it's difficult. I mean, I remember when I went into government and people think you can make an about face. You can't do that. It's like a giant ship, and you attempt to guide this ship. And if you can nudge it over just, anywhere from 0 to 5 degrees maybe, you've probably done very well. But the point is, he isn't even attempting to do these things. It's one thing to fail at it. It's another thing to not even attempt to do it.
Well, he has tried to bring in universal health care, and that's been a very controversial issue here. And of course, for those watching America from outside, especially countries in Europe where there is this kind of system, they're a bit baffled why it's so hard, why America seems to fear the social safety net so much. And I know in your book you write about President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, and the coup attempt, because there was a fear that perhaps he was bringing socialism too much into America.
Well, you have to remember, when you say the word socialism in this country, it sends chills down people's spines. And we've already seen that pure socialism or whatever doesn't work, or communism, with the fall of the Soviet Union. We just got a view of pure capitalism here with our current economic situation where they let Wall Street run amok. They took off all regulations. Well, that didn't work either. So clearly, you've got to find a happy median between the two. Yes, we're a capitalist society, but certainly we need a little bit of socialism to take care of the less fortunate people in our country.
Well, Jesse Ventura, I want to touch on some of your intriguing views on the CIA when we return. We're going to take a very short break here, but more of our discussion. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We're having a fascinating rethink about America's modern history, questioning the facts with former professional wrestling star, television host and Minnesota governor Jesse Ventura, whose latest book says it all in the title: American Conspiracies, Lies, Lies and More Dirty Lies That the Government Tells Us. Let's ask him more about those lies. Actually, let's get a question in from a caller. We have Rem on the line, and Jack, I'd like to put your question to the governor. Please go ahead.
Yeah, first of all, God bless you, Jesse. You are a wonderful person in the things you're saying. And I figured the only reason you didn't run for the U.S. Senate is that you're going to run for president in 2012. Is Jack Shepard from Rome right or wrong? Get in the ring, Jesse.
Well, will I run for president in 2012? The easiest way I can answer that is this. There's a great Crosby, Stills and Nash song called Long Time Gone. And in the lyrics to that song, it says, if you're going to get yourself elected, you had better cut your hair. So, you know, my hair is now down to my shoulders. So that shows you I have no plans to run. Now, I'll tell you this. If you see me back with the shaved head again, then watch out.
Anwar's in Paris with the question.
But at this point in time, I have no desire to seek public office. I did 6 years in the United States Navy. I did 4 years as a mayor. I did 4 years as a governor. That's 14 years of public service for my country.
We've got a caller on the line from Paris. Anwar's with us. Anwar, go ahead.
Thank you, Riz. Hello, Riz. Hello,
Hi.
Governor. I would like to ask a question to Governor. Governor, as far as I listen you, I truly believe that you are a very patriotic person and very honest, sincere person. So my question is very simple to you. As you know, that honesty is the best policy. I truly believe you believe that, and so do I. So do you believe at this moment, all over the world, honesty is the best policy, individually, even in a state level?
Okay. Is honesty working in this day and age, Governor?
You know, that's an interesting question, because people in the country always say, tell me the truth, tell it like it is, and then when you do, you get attacked for it. You know, a classic example was this. If you go to American baseball, Jose Canseco was the ball player that broke the story of the use of anabolic steroids, drug enhancement in the game. When Jose Canseco came out and was honest and told the media and the public what was going on in the game, he was literally destroyed. Well, it turned out he was telling the complete truth, right, and nobody's ever come back to vindicate him or say, wow, the only person that really told the truth was Jose Canseco. So I think people, on one hand, they tell you they want the truth, but on the other hand, I'm not sure if they really do want the truth. I certainly believe the truth always prevails, because I live by one simple thing, and that is this. If you tell the truth, you don't have to have a good memory.
That's right. Well, now I have to ask you about your views on the United States Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, which is essentially supposed to operate outside the U.S. borders, but I gather you've had your own run-in with them. Tell us about that.
Well, after I was elected governor of Minnesota, about 30 days in, I was requested to the bowels of the Capitol before the legislature got there, and I was basically interrogated by 23 members of the CIA, and all their questions dealt with how did I get elected. And I determined from that that, number one, they didn't see me coming, because they're obviously an intelligence gathering organization, and for them to, to question me. And second of all the questions again dealt with how did I get elected. Now, was that to learn so they could see, are there 6 more of these guys on the horizon, these independents? Or was it being done so that they can ensure no independent like me could ever win again? And then, of course, the second thing, and as we know, the CIA is not supposed to be, by their mission statement, operational within the United States. Well, as governor of Minnesota, I and my chief of staff were the only two people allowed to know that there's a CIA agent embedded in Minnesota government who does double duty, both as a Minnesota government employee and an agent for the Central Intelligence Agency. And I could only assume that Minnesota is not the exception, that they must have one in every state in the United States.
Now, I know that you see the CIA as being behind a lot of the conspiracies you write about in the book as well, but do you believe there's really such power within the agency to have, you know, such an impact on the world? Can they really bring about that much change?
Well, I think if you read about when they were formed back right after World War II by President Harry Truman, I think that they got so unto themselves that they became so powerful that no one was there to check and balance them. And, you know, plus they also get involved in illegal activities to make money on the side. Well, the reason they do that is so that they don't have to answer to Congress at all. When Congress appropriates money and gives it to some agency, well, they expect in return to receive reports, find out what the money's being spent on. But if you're making money in, say, a black market illegal area, you then Congress doesn't know about it, so they can simply be a rogue and run around out there and do anything they want to do without having to answer to anyone.
We've got the Netherlands on the line. Good to hear from the Netherlands. AARYAN, your question, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Khan. My question is, I have two questions for Mr. Ventura and one for you, Mr. Khan. First question, Mr. Ventura, you're doing an amazing job. There's no doubt about that, and everybody is proud of you. But why don't you support the 9/11 Truth movement and Mr. Richard Gage,
okay,
the one who represent those people? Because the most important.
AARYAN, just because we're short of time, let's have the other questions, and we'll get to that.
Okay. The other question is.
First of all, I'm not an architect or an engineer, so why would I have to join Richard Gage's group? His group, he's involved with our architects and engineers, you know, and I'm not one of them. Second of all, if you notice, 9/11 Truth gets hammered. They get blitzed. They're put on lists and all this, and the media just goes out to destroy them. They don't need to question what I'm doing. You can see what I'm doing. And I don't think it matters whether I sign on and belong to some group. You know, the truth is not in what you say. The truth is in what you do.
AARYAN, you had something else to ask as well.
Yes, sir. Okay, now that's in fact, that's a fact that you're doing an amazing job, but if you become their voice, at least, because those guys, they cannot appear to CNN or Al Jazeera, Mr. Richard Gage, because once we disclose that fact about 9/11 World Trade Center number 7, believe me, the whole hoax, the biggest deception in the modern history will be disclosed to every
AARYAN, let me put a couple of the questions we got from other viewers on the same subject. Governor, I can put these to you because you stirred a lot of controversy with your views on what may have really happened on 9/11. And we had this from a couple of questions, one from Alfeo Musa, for example, that says, many documentaries support the belief that 9/11 was an inside job. However, one becomes skeptical because the US government can't kill its own people. The second one from Barnabas Muvuti says, was 9/11 indeed an inside job? Did Bush scheme and carry it out to arouse American nationalism and patriotism? And I know you believe the government knew more, or at least knew in advance information enough to have done something but didn't. And why do you think that is?
Well, first of all, saying that the government won't kill its own people, I think is ridiculous, because I'll give you an example, and I have to go back to the Vietnam War. They've now admitted that the Gulf of Tonkin incident never happened. And that was the incident where they said that the North Vietnamese fired on a ship, which is an act of war. Well, as a result of that deception, 58,000 of my generation were killed in Vietnam. As much as maybe 1 million Vietnamese were killed. An entire war was started over a fraudulent lie that didn't happen. So don't come at me and say that, you know, the government looks at the big picture. If there happens to be some collateral damage along the way, oh well, so be it. Okay, what was the next question?
Well, it was really talking about 9/11, but actually it raises an interesting question we just got from our live station CHATROOM, where people are online talking about this, from Portland in the US. Evan Mazur says, which true American conspiracy has been the most damaging to the people of the United States, in your opinion?
I think the one that's been most damaging was the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Because it was from that point on that if they killed President Kennedy, the president, and they could get away with that, that opened the door to let them know they could get away with anything.
So if Governor, if what you say is true, that the government is so much in control, it has so much power, can do so much behind closed doors, where does it leave us as a society? I mean, we seem to have so little control in what's going on in society. What can we do about it?
Well, first of all, you know, I can't prove this stuff, and my opinion is based upon documentation that we've discovered through hours and months of research to do this book. So it's not anything that's formulated in my brain that is carrying it forward. I'm not Vince Flynn. I'm not Tom Clancy making up some espionage story or whatever. It's all based upon documentation. Where can we go now? Well, we can be vigilant. We cannot fall for this stuff. We can hold our elected officials' feet to the fire. Again, Thomas Jefferson said, dissension's the greatest form of patriotism. We can, and you'll get good government if you're on top of it and you force them to be good government. And that's what we need in this country. No more apathy. We need people to take active roles. And in my opinion, we need to get rid of and defeat the Democratic and Republican parties and start electing other people to run our government.
Well, Governor, more power to you for your views, and thank you very much for expressing them on the show. We're glad to have you with us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. We'll do it again, hopefully.
For sure. Thank you for joining us with your questions. Remember, you can follow the show on Facebook and see what we're up to there. You can give us your feedback on the show and post your questions and comments. Well, my friend and colleague Anand Naidu will be filling in for me next week. He'll be looking at new plans by Western nations to connect culturally with the people of Afghanistan. Make sure you join him for that. Until then, from me and the team, we'll see you next time.